Hi everyone, it's Danelli here. I am going to talk a little bit about writing. Um, 3 ways to get started with writing. So the reason why I'm making this video is because after working for several colleges in the Los Angeles area, I started to get an idea of what were some of the barriers that students were facing or individuals were facing when it came to writing, communications, composition. And they frequently asked the question, well, how do I get started with writing? Like, what do I do? And that question, after doing some, like sleuth, sleuth questioning myself, that question usually arose from a couple of different places. Students wanted to learn how to build a habit around writing so that they could get better at writing. And, practice makes perfect, or at least helps you master something over a period of time. And so they really wanted to learn like how to start writing to build a habit. And the other reason they asked this question, like, well, how do I start writing? The other reason was because they usually froze up. They froze up, they didn't know where to start. There was frequent bouts of writer's block when it came time to actually doing some writing. And I realized that, this sort of experience was more so a psychological experience, and they really just needed somebody to sit with them and walk them through practical steps that would help them get started with writing. Um, and so I'm going to talk about a few of them. So the first one on my list here, number one, is typing. Just type, right? Get your cell phone, get your iPad, get your computer started, go to the Notes app and start typing what it is that's in your mind. If you are able to ask yourself a prompt or dig up a prompt from somewhere, great. Start with that. Write the question down, write the prompt down, and then start rewriting. Start writing whatever comes to your mind, but type it out. That is one way to actually get started with gathering some ideas for whatever it is that you're trying to write. Um, the other way to start is pen and paper. This is the more traditional approach, one that I personally love to do whenever I'm stuck with, a little bit of writer's block. I just grab a pen and a piece of paper or a notebook and I start to write. And I really love this one because it really tackles the like the writer, the psychological part of the writer's block. Block is a very physical experience on top of a psychological experience, a mental experience. Like people have physical symptoms for, um, like anxiety and mental blocks and, these different sort of um, like blocks that you have with education or learning or doing some kind of like quote unquote academic work. And I borrow this from narratology, from psychologically informed pedagogy, which is just like teaching philosophy. Like, how do you teach people how to learn? And um, a lot of these sort of like teaching philosophies expanded, took from what would be considered like expressive arts therapy psychology. And they really work at like connecting mind with body. So pen and paper is one of those things that connects your mind with your body because you're actually physically taking the pen and you're writing and you're physically doing something. Oftentimes, typing on a phone or typing with your fingers on a keyboard is not enough. So people need to actually have that motion of like, I need a pen in my hand and I need to write something. and is also it's also one of the reasons why like painting and like having a brush in your hand actually is incredibly useful for like healing purposes when it comes to like expressive arts therapy. And there's so many psychologists and expressive arts therapists and take from that, have borrowed research from that prove that this is really helpful. So the second way to literally start writing is to just pick up a pen and a paper. It sounds like the simplest advice, but I am here to state it and just give it to you straight up. So that's number two. Number three, and I'm sorry about the formatting on this. Um, I'm really sorry about the formatting on this PowerPoint. I made them perfect on Canva, and or when they're downloaded, the formatting goes crazy. But the third um, writing advice or tip way to get started with writing is voice notes. So this is something that a friend of mine taught me years ago, like just advice that he gave. He wanted to communicate with his girlfriend better. And one of the things that he taught me was that they didn't actually talk. Sometimes it was better for them to just write things out. Writing letters is a great way, but he would create like a note and would add her as a collaborator. And so they would actually just ask each other questions and write each other's notes through the notes app. But um, one of the things that, came out of that conversation was voice notes, that whenever they couldn't actually write things down, they would use voice notes. They would leave audio voice notes for each other. And those two things actually really struck me as like super interesting and a super interesting approach. Voice notes are a great way to get started. Whenever you cannot write something down, practicing what you want to write or saying what you want to write, saying it out loud first always helps. It is one of the tips that I give my own students whenever I sit them down and I'm editing with them, is that they should read their writing out loud. It really helps to hear your own voice, what you've put on the paper. So the opposite actually also helps. Leave a voice note for yourself. Um, and in that regard, along those same lines, actually having a voice to text app on your phone really helps, because the voice to text app will actually save the note, in writing so that you can see how it would appear if you had written it down yourself. So, those are three ways that you can get started, three practical ways to get started with writing. So, typing, pen and paper, voice notes. Um, and again, it seems really silly to talk about three practical ways to actually start writing, because a lot of people think, it's kind of obvious, an obvious thing to know how to write or to know how to start to write. But there's a lot of people that have been away from a school or college or academia for a really, really long time, and they've done work that's primarily, you know, um, uh, physical labor. So they didn't actually have to write very often, and they want to start learning how to build a habit and to practice. And these are three practical ways to do that. The other reason is for the freezing up. People freeze up. They need somebody to sit down and walk them through tips on how to actually start writing. And there's a lot of reasons why people would want to start writing and practicing the art of writing or the habit of writing. Um, Sometimes it's just to figure out ways of writing an email better, figuring out ways of um, like sounding more professional, so they need to find ways to practice their professional writing skills or formal writing skills. A lot of them are returning to college or university, or they're trying to figure out how to write personal statements. So they need to describe themselves. They need to write essays about their life. If they want to get scholarships or grants, sometimes they have to write essays for that. They have to write essays for money. So they want to make sure that they sound professional and they need to start practicing. Like I mentioned earlier, for practical, like journaling purposes, they want to journal. They want to go ahead and um, kind of approach uh, unloading some of like their mental thoughts due to anxiety or mental health reasons, and they want to start journaling. And so they want practical tips on how to do that, like how to physically start writing, which, like I mentioned earlier, is part of a little bit of like expressive arts therapy approaches. And uh, yeah, so those are three practical ways how to start to actually write. That's really different from like what to write about. And that's probably going to be a separate video for you guys and in the future. But yeah, three three ways. And that is it for this short video. I want to thank you so much for joining me. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, share, all of those good things. This video with your friends and whoever else. I would really appreciate it. Um, and stay tuned for more videos because I hope to expand a little bit more, maybe even approach follow this three ways to get started with what to write about or practical prompts. So stay tuned. Thanks so much.